What's going on YouTube? Kamikazevondoom here with another Division 2 video. Now shout out to the DoD, Disciples of Doom, and today's video I'm going to take you guys to school. I'm going to teach you what weapon talents to use and why. I'm going to talk about which combos are better than others, and I'm also going to explain different forms of the quote-unquote meta build. So if that sounds good, go ahead, pull up your chair, bring out that popcorn, and yeah, get settled in. Now we're just going to jump straight into this, so don't forget to hit that like and subscribe if you're new. Alright, so talking about weapon talent combos and what to use and why. And let's go ahead and get that black background. There we go. Alright, so first build we're going to talk about is Glass Cannon on the chest piece and Vigilance on the backpack. Now this has been a known meta for assault rifle builds, and I don't know, pretty much any build you really want as long as you're at range. This is a great build combination to use. Now the reason I am saying at range is because of the disadvantages of using these talents. Now starting off with the backpack, Vigilance. Why would you want to use Vigilance at range with Glass Cannon? Well, taking damage will disable this talent. So you want to be at a distance to where it's more likely you're going to get the first shot on the enemy, and it's less likely that they're going to just keep hitting you, because you want this total weapon damage buff to be active as long as possible during a gunfight. Now, the other reason is Glass Cannon. Now, Glass Cannon takes all of your damage, all of your buffs, and it amplifies it. You can see with the talent, all damage you deal is amplified by 25%. However, all of your incoming damage is amplified by 50%. So, being at range and using this for like quote-unquote beams or, just killing enemies at a mid to long range, this will help you out significantly. Now, obviously, not a lot of people have the Eagle Bear. The longer you shoot it, the more accurate it gets. So at range, it's just, it's amazing. So that's going to be your first talent combination that you should look into, is Glass Cannon and Vigilance. Now the next one I want to talk about is Glass Cannon and Shock and Awe. Now this is a skill build. More importantly, this is a explosive skill build. That's why I have the Grupo and the China Light. But besides the point, let's talk about the talents. Now, Perfect Shock and Awe. Why would you want to use this on a skill build? Well, pretty simple. You use one skill to proc this talent, and then when this talent is procced, you use the other skill to, take full advantage of that buff. So, how I would do it is I would run a Stinger Hive with a Sticky Bomb. Now, when you throw down the Stinger Hive, every single hive will proc the Perfect Shock and Awe. Now, Perfect Shock and Awe, applying a status effect to any enemy, increases your skill damage and repair by 20% for 27 seconds. Now, that's a really long duration, especially during a firefight. But, more importantly, is this 20% is added to all your other buffs, and then it is amplified by your Glass Cannon. So you want to use that in conjunction with Glass Cannon, that way you can take full advantage of the damage procs. And then all of a sudden your really hard hitting Sticky Bomb will then start to one hit everything and everybody. Alright, so we've talked about Glass Cannon Vigilance, Glass Cannon Shock and Awe. Now let's talk about Unbreakable and Vigilance. Now this one is actually more popular than the Glass Cannon Vigilance, and that's because of survivability. A lot of people just are not okay with Glass Cannon just because they feel like they can't survive with all of that amplified incoming damage. So your next best thing is running Unbreakable. So same thing applies here. You're using this to mid to long range because you are using Vigilance. So every time you take damage, you are not going to have this talent activated. So you want to be at some sort of range, that way you're not, taking damage too much. And let's say you are taking a lot of damage, this Unbreakable will help out your survivability, because every time your armor is depleted, you will get that armor back immediately. So in PvE, it says right here 95%. And then if I go to PvE, it goes down to 50%. Alright, next one. So we just did Unbreakable Vigilance. Now let's talk about Trauma and Wicked. Now remember, some of these builds I am not using. I'm just showing you examples for the talents. And some of these builds I actually am using. But this is just two pieces I threw together just to show you. So, Trauma. Every time you shoot an enemy in the head, it will blind that enemy. And every time you shoot them in the chest, it will put bleed on that enemy. However, both of these have a 30-second cooldown. So this is why, in my opinion, I highly recommend you would rather use, like Ridgeway's Pride chest piece, something of that sort, because the Ridgeway's Pride chest piece, it would continuously get the enemy on bleed, where Trauma, it's kind of like a 30-second cooldown. So you shoot them, and then you have 30 seconds until you can do it again. However, part about this is you run it with Wicked. Now, the only reason I would run Trauma with Wicked instead of Ridgeway's Pride with Wicked is if I'm not running any sort of like status effects. Because the Trauma, the cooldown is so long, in my opinion, it is not worth running it with status effects. So what I would do is I would go all damage, and I would only use Trauma to proc Wicked, because Wicked gives you that 18% weapon damage buff for 27 seconds. Now, you can already see where the problem lies, and this is why I recommend, aiming more towards Ridgeway's Pride chest piece, but this is a very doable combo, and a lot of people don't have the Ridgeway's Pride chest piece, so that's why I am spotlighting this combination, because the cooldown on Perfectly Wicked is 27 seconds, and that's if you run the Perfectly Wicked. Now the cooldown on Trauma is 30 seconds. So that means if you are in a firefight that is longer than 27 seconds, you have 3 seconds to where you cannot use Wicked or Trauma. And that, in my opinion, is a huge problem. But for a lot of people, if you run this with all damage, within the 27 seconds of Perfectly Wicked being activated, you should be able to kill all the enemies. And then whenever the next wave or the next engagement continues, then you proc Trauma again, and you have all that weapon damage again. You can see what I'm getting at. But if you are doing like a really hard engagement or a long engagement, there is a possibility you would have Trauma and Wicked disabled for 3 seconds without being able to do anything about it. So that's the only disadvantage of running this combination. Alright, next up we have the meta of metas. Intimidate with Adrenaline Rush. Now this, in my opinion, is the best combination to use for your weapon talents. Reason being is you just cannot pass up all of the amplified damage and bonus armor. So it's increasing your survivability, it's increasing your sustainability because it keeps proccing bonus armor over and over, and the damage is just uncomparable. You get 35% weapon damage amplified, and that's every time you're within 10 meters of an enemy and you have bonus armor. Now the funny part is, with Adrenaline Rush, every time you're within 10 meters of an enemy, you have bonus armor. So using these together is a no-brainer, because every single time you're close to an enemy, you're going to have all that extra amplified damage. So that's why a lot of people use this for their quote-unquote meta builds, is because no matter what, you're going to see from the indications of your Adrenaline Rush, every time you're close to an enemy, it's going to prop up a little indicator. Hey, you've got Adrenaline Rush. So then, hey, I know there's an enemy close by, and I know that I have amplified weapon damage because that procs my Intimidate. So you can start to see why this becomes a meta build, because running that with, like, say, the Lady Death, where you get amplified damage just from using the weapon, now you're just, melting everything and everybody in sight. Alright, so the next combination, Obliterate and Concussion. So this is a great combination to run, especially with assault rifles. Now, the cool thing about this is both of these talents increase your weapon damage. So talking about the chest piece, Obliterate, great talent. So every crit hit will increase your weapon damage by 1%, and that'll stack up to 25 times. Remember last year, they actually buffed this talent where it used to be 15 times, and then they made it to where now you can get up to 25% weapon damage just from this talent. Now the cool thing about this is running this with Concussion will get your weapon damage up even more, especially if you are aiming for the head, because you can crit hit enemies on the head. So for Concussion, headshots will increase your total weapon damage by 10% for every 1.5 seconds. Now, if you kill that enemy with a headshot, it increases your weapon damage by 15% for 10 seconds. So, in a perfect world, what you'd want to do is you'd want to get a headshot kill, keep shooting them in the head, and then you are critting to get your Obliterate to go up even more. So now you're getting weapon damage from your Obliterate, you're getting weapon damage from your headshot kill, and you're getting weapon damage from your headshots. So that's 3 different ways to increase your weapon damage. And if you are running this with any sort of multiplicative, like damage to armor or damage to targets at a cover, all of these buffs are even higher, because then it puts into account, okay, does the enemy have armor? Boom, multiplicative. Is the enemy out of cover? Boom, multiplicative. And now all of these buffs are just getting higher and higher, and you're just melting everything in sight. So that is Obliterate and Concussion. Next up, let's see. We have Kinetic Momentum and Perfect Shock and Awe. So again, let's go back up to the top. I showed you Glass Cannon and Perfect Shock and Awe. That way, every time you use the Hive, you proc Shock and Awe, which then gets amplified from your Glass Cannon, and then all of a sudden, boom, your Sticky Bomb is one-hitting everybody. Well, same kind of logic applies here, but in this one, you're using Kinetic Momentum, because a lot of people are not a fan of Glass Cannon and the incoming amplified damage. So here we go, side by side. Now the reason why people aim more towards Kinetic Momentum is, again, because you're not getting all that extra incoming damage, and this just keeps stacking every time you're in combat. So Kinetic Momentum, when in combat, each of your skills will generate a stack while active or not on cooldown. Now these stacks will increase your total skill damage by 1%, or skill repair, but we're talking about skill damage here. So each stack will increase your total skill damage by 1%, and it'll go up to 15 stacks. So you can get up to 15% skill damage just by being in combat running around with this talent. Now the cool part is running that with Perfect Shock and Awe, you would then get 20% skill damage there as well. So you can get upwards of 35% skill damage just by proccing one of these and just by having Kinetic Momentum. So that's why a lot of people, they use it that way. That way they don't have to worry about the incoming damage, and that way they can just know that they're going to have really high skill damage. Now again, this is not amplified, so Glass Cannon does hit harder, but Kinetic Momentum does increase your survivability and your sustainability. So if you're running a skill build and you're just dead set on not running Glass Cannon, then Kinetic Momentum is your next best bet. Alright, so after Kinetic Momentum, then we're going to talk about my hardest hitting combinations here. So the hardest hitting combination in the game is Hunter's Fury with Intimidate, because Hunter's Fury gives you amplified damage, Intimidate gives you amplified damage, and if you're running it with Lady Death, you get amplified damage from that as well. However, what I wanted to teach you guys in the very last parts of this video is the difference between running, say, normal Intimidate and perfect Adrenaline Rush versus perfect Intimidate and normal Adrenaline Rush. So, first of the two, let's talk about it. So why would I talk to you about this combination? Well, Hunter's Fury is stupid strong. It is stupid strong. And if you use this with Intimidate and Adrenaline Rush, it's just even worse. Stupid meaning good. It's really good. Now, the Apex Predator, you get this from running the 4 pieces of Hunter's Fury. So enemies within 15 meters will receive a debuff, and you'll actually see an indicator over their head to show you you're within 15 meters. Now, once you see that indicator, you get 20% amplified damage. That is insane, right? So that's within 15 meters. Then, once you're within 10 meters, you get the bonus armor from Adrenaline Rush, which then procs your Intimidate. Now, just normal Intimidate gives you 35% amplified damage, right? So, let's just say in PvE, right? For example, in PvE, you get 75% amplified damage from your Lady Death. You get 35% amplified damage from your Intimidate. So that's 110% amplified damage just right then and there. But running Hunter's Fury, you get another 20%. So that's 130% amplified damage the very first time you shoot an enemy. So you're going to see the proc of Hunter's Fury, you're going to see the proc of your Adrenaline Rush, and then you have 130% amplified damage on your Lady Death. Isn't that amazing? Right. But it gets even better. So with Hunter's Fury, if you kill an enemy with this debuff, it disorients enemies around them. Now, those enemies that are disoriented, you get another 5% amplified damage per enemy. So you could get upwards of 155% amplified damage if you had Hunter's Fury fully procced and you're using Intimidate with the Lady Death. That is a lot of amplified damage. And, of course, if you're using perfect Adrenaline Rush, you could get upwards of 69% giggity bonus armor. So you're getting bonus armor with upwards of 155% amplified damage. It's a no-brainer why this is meta, because this will kill anything in front of it. Now, what I wanted to explain here is, how you can make this even better. Now, you can make this even better with this combination right here. Now, the reason it's better is perfect Intimidate. So you're going to get another 5% amplified damage on top of everything I just explained. So now the cap is 160% amplified damage. And that's with, full procs of your Hunter's Fury, running the Lady Death, and you have perfect Intimidate. Now, the reason I wanted to show you this is because this will actually hit harder in every aspect of the game, whether it be PvE, PvP, doesn't matter. It's another 5% amplified damage, and that is the best damage you can get in this game. Now, the only downside to this is you would be running normal Adrenaline Rush instead of perfect Adrenaline Rush. So instead of 69 giggity bonus armor, you're going to only get upwards of 60% bonus armor. And then remember, in PvP, that is cut in half, so 30% or like what, 37%. Now remember, for perfect intimidate and intimidate, it doesn't matter if you're in PvE or PvP, it's still 40% amplified damage. So that's why this combination right here is the hardest hitting combination, because you can get upwards of 160% amplified damage. Pretty crazy. And that's pretty much it. Let's see, we've gone through Glass Cannon Vigilance, we've gone through Glass Cannon Shock and Awe, Unbreakable Vigilance, Trauma Wicked, and we also talked about Ridgeway and Wicked. Talked about Intimidate and Adrenaline Rush versus Perfect Intimidate, Perfect Adrenaline Rush. Talked about Obliterate and Concussion, Kinetic Momentum and Shock and Awe, and then obviously the hardest hitting amplified damage combos in the game. Now, if you have any questions, comments for me at all, I know I am not going over a majority of the talents, and that's because these, in my opinion, are the top tier talents in the game. Not only that, but these are the best combinations you want to run and how to run them together. Whether it be Glass Cannon Vigilance, Unbreakable Vigilance, you're still getting the same effect with the same logic. Whether it be Glass Cannon Shock and Awe or Kinetic Momentum Shock and Awe, same thing applies. The only difference is either you're worried about your survivability or you're more worried about doing more damage. But, alright, if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. I am Kamikazevondoom. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.